People say, here's my button.
All right, Jerry, I got 2 o'clock. So,
Okay, Chip, take it away.
all right. Um, Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March edition of the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions. My name is Chip Zimmer, and I am with the Kentucky Division of Water. And this webinar is hosted by the State Climate Office for Kentucky, which is a division of the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University. And as always, this webinar series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information Systems and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. And this production and delivery of this webinar reflects the contributions of many partners committed to serving the needs of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and its people. And that includes the Kentucky Climate Center, UK Ag Weather Center, and also the Kentucky Division of Water. And our next webinar will be on April 2nd at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And yes, I said daylight time. We will jump forward Sunday morning. So make sure you set your clocks forward before you go to bed Saturday. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing. It's also being live streamed on the Kentucky Climate Center's YouTube channel and will be available on that channel archived. So if you want to watch it in the future. And this picture in the background here, this is from the Nicholas County Mesonet Station. This is a nighttime picture. That is the moon, a full moon. And with the full moon combined with the snow on the ground, you could actually had a view at night. It wasn't just a black screen. So a pretty cool picture there. Back from the beginning of the month when we were covered in ice and snow. Um, So, as always, we're going to start talking about the recent conditions. We'll move on to impacts, outlooks, and finish up summary and answer any questions. Um, and the pictures we got here, um, up at the top here, we got that is from Shelby County on the 19th. You see a little bit of a thunderstorm moving through, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here later on. And at the bottom, that's a sunset at the Breathitt County, one of the Breathitt County gauges. That is one of the Robinson Forest Mesonet stations up on top of the mountain. And you can see the snow in the field there, with the sun setting. So we'll start talking about recent conditions. It's been raining, especially if you're in western and northern Kentucky. It's been raining. The past 48 hours, you can see we've got some pretty impressive totals. 2.5 inches of rain stretching from Covington down the Ohio River to Union County, um, with still 1.5 inches down by Paducah. If you're in southern and eastern Kentucky, you're still waiting on the rain. It's gonna come, but it's been a pretty wet couple of days so far. Something that we've needed. Um, Looking at 7-day precipitation, this does not include all the rain that we've got today. It does include some of the stuff up there in Indiana, up by Cincinnati. That was the first round of this current storm system that was up there. Um, for the rest of the state, you see 1/2 inch to 1 inch is what the green is, and then the bluer amounts are less than 1/2 inch. So Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, expanding out the 14 days. A little bit more rain out in southeastern Kentucky, 1.5 inches to 3 inches totals out there the past 14 days. Lighter amounts, inch or less, across most of the rest of the state. Again, that's not including all the rain that we've gotten today. Um, Cut to 30 days. You can see kind of a split here. Southeastern Kentucky, 2-3 inches of precipitation. Normal, slightly below normal precipitation. Um, if you go out into northern Kentucky, lighter amounts, and especially once you get out in the western Kentucky, you see only a half inch to an inch of precipitation in the past 30 days. So, uh, been a dry February, and you'll see that trend continue here. If we look at 60 days, so basically since the beginning of the year, you can see from northern Kentucky stretching along the Ohio all the way down to western Kentucky, only 2 to 4 inches, and those blues are less than 2 inches. So, um, over 60 days, that is not a lot of rain. Again, as you go east into southeast Kentucky, you have considerably more precipitation, 6 to 8 inches of rain. Again, close to normal, slightly below normal. And then if you expand out to 90 days, um, you can see again down in western Kentucky, only 2 to 4 inches of precipitation since basically the beginning of December. So December, this goes from December 5th. Uh, that is very little rainfall for that period of time. And then if you migrate to the east, southeast Kentucky, you're seeing 6 to 8, 8 to 10 inches of precipitation. Again, normal-ish, just slightly below normal. And then central and northern Kentucky, between 4 to 6 and 6 to 8 inches of rain. So again, here's the SPIs, and what the SPIs stand for, is Standardized Precipitation Index. So it's basically creating a bell curve, and so the drier, the browner the colors are, the redder the colors are, that's standard deviations away from normal. So looking at 30 days, most of the state, little on the dry side, except for eastern Kentucky, but you get the drier amounts down in the western Kentucky. And those are color coded to match up with the U.S. Drought Monitor. If you go out to the 60-day, again, eastern Kentucky, fairly normal, drier as you get into northern and central Kentucky, and then you can see just the very dry out in western Kentucky, and that red popping up is you're talking about like 1 in 20 year type dryness out there. And then we get down into the 90-day SPI, and you see just a bright reds down and these dark reds down western Kentucky. Those darkest reds, I mean, they're about as far down the bell curve as you can get. You're talking like 1 in 50 year plus dryness down there. So it's been a very dry winter, especially in western Kentucky. Looking at the totals for the month of February, state average 1.68 inches precipitation. That is less than half of what we normally see for the month of February. And it was still only the 12th driest February. So not uncommon to have these very dry Februaries. Looking at the winter as a whole, though, the Commonwealth averaged 6.12 inches precipitation, which is 5.88 inches below normal. So just over half the normal amount of rain that we normally get for the winter in Kentucky. And that ends up being the fourth driest winter on record for the state. And if we look just at western Kentucky, Paducah only for the whole winter, so since December 1st, only recorded 3.27 inches of precipitation. That's about a quarter of what they normally see, and that was the driest winter on record for Paducah. And for the Western Climatic Division as a whole, it was the second driest winter on record and the fourth driest season on record. So taking winter, spring, fall, summer, the only seasons drier were the fall of 1963 and 1953, and also the winter of 1963. So 1963 bookended by two historic dry periods. So glad I wasn't doing drought monitoring back then. That would not have been a fun year. And over on the right, you have some Mesonet data, and you can see pretty dry in December and January. Most of these counties are in western Kentucky. There is Boone County, which is up in northern Kentucky. But those February totals are really impressive. Most of them below an inch or even a half inch. But then if you look down at the bottom here, Harlan County, now that gauge is up on Black Mountain, so it gets a little extra boost in rainfall, but from the elevation. But they've had almost 10.5 inches this winter. Jackson County, a little over 8 inches, 8.37 inches of precipitation. That's about average for the winter, maybe a little low. And even Warren County out in west central Kentucky, still almost 7 inches of precipitation. It's below normal, but nothing earth shattering. That's not something we'd be spending a lot of time talking on. But these totals, less than 3 inches of precipitation for a 3-month period. Is pretty amazing to see. Luckily, it was winter. If this had happened any other season, there would have been some pretty big impacts. For this time of year, not much to speak of. Really, we don't have a lot of ET this time of year. Throw in the fact that we were frozen for a month, almost. Really, just not a lot going on, and we'll talk about what it's done with stream flows and soil moisture here in just a second. But I had made these graphs last year when we were super wet, and you can see 2025 up here. I lost my cursor, but up in that upper right, you can see 2025. And what this is, the horizontal axis. Horizontal axis is the winter precipitation. The vertical axis is the springtime precipitation. And what this is just grafting dates for they were. So if you're in that bottom left quadrant, you had those years had dry springs and dry winters. Vice versa, if you're in the top right quadrant, you had those years had wet springs and wet winters. That green line represents this year. So you can see there's 3 years that were drier than this winter. And there's a few more that were close: 1981, 1941, 1931, all pretty dry winters. And the one thing you notice, they all also had dry springs. Now, 1981, 1963, pretty close to normal, so that wouldn't be too bad. But especially like 1941, having 2 dry seasons back to back like that, and 1941 was a drought year. The 40s in general, or early 40s in general, were drought years. But just something worth noting, that historically, when we've had a very dry winter, we've also had a dryish spring. Now, that's just historically. Doesn't mean that we're going to have a dry spring, but just putting it in context that that has happened in the past, or that's how it's worked in the past. But there's my cursor. So there's 2025 up here. So one thing to note, I've heard a lot of comparisons of this year to 2012, which is located right here. Now, this is for the whole state. For Western Kentucky, 2012 would probably be out here somewhere, down here, because it was drier out there. 2012 did come off on the heels of after a very wet year. 2011, you can see way up here. It was very, very wet. That's our wettest year on record for the state. And it started to get dry in the fall of 2011 and kind of carried through kind of a dry winter in 2012 as well. It wasn't anything notable, but it was something you noticed. So this year has been a little drier than that. The big kicker for 2012 was 2012 in March was extremely dry and very hot, for at least for on March standards. And then we had an okay April, followed by an extremely dry May, June. That was also extremely hot. Temperatures well over 100 in June. So that was when, that March was kind of the kicker. That's kind of what set everything in motion, having that really dry March after kind of a dry fall winter. And I think that that's an important thing to talk about, and we'll talk about what we're going to see in March this year coming up. But that was kind of the defining month of that 2012 drought, followed by the dry May or June. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later, of whether we're following that path or not. So temperatures. Overall, the state averaged 36.7 degrees in February, which is about a degree and a half below normal. And it tied us for the 62nd coldest February on record, which is pretty much right in the middle. Nothing really notable about the temperatures. Obviously, the first half of February was very cold, and then we kind of moderated and kind of yo-yoed back and forth. And for the winter, we averaged 35 degrees, which was about 1.9 degrees below normal, and it tied us for the 47th coldest winter on record. So the cold, but nothing historically notable. Um, and you look here at the temperatures, the average total temperature, it was above normal out in Western Kentucky and below normal up in Northern and Eastern Kentucky. And if you look at highs, high temperatures were above normal basically every place west of I-75. But if you look at low temperatures, you can see all this green is you can see temperatures were below normal and well below normal in Northern Kentucky, just a little bit above normal there in central Western Kentucky. Stream flows. First off, if you noticed, normally when I show this slide, we have multiple maps. Unfortunately, the USGS just got rid of their Water Watch page and replaced it with a new page. And when they did that, they discontinued the 7-day and 28-day stream flow averages. And from what I have understood, they are not bringing them back. And that's significant because when you're just looking at live stream flows, they can change pretty quickly. Regulated, we have a lot of streams and rivers that have dams on them that have big withdrawals, big releases, and they can cause that stream to go up in river to go up and down pretty quickly. And so if you look at it, you can flip on and be like, oh, this stream's green. It's fine. Well, there was just a big release of water, or there was a quick pop-up thunderstorm or something. And if you'd looked at it the day before, even a few hours before, it would have been red or orange. So these snapshots, this 1 day average is not the greatest if you're looking at trends. It's good for looking at it right then. And an example being Monday when I was doing drought monitoring, all this was red and orange up by Louisville. The next morning, it was all blue and green. So depending on what day I had looked at it, um, would have could have skewed my view. Now I'm looking at this map every day, so it's not as bad for me, but it's still going to make life pretty tough. And I know there's some work being done to help maybe resurrect those maps from different places, but it's probably gonna be a while. So we're kind of be flying slightly blind um, for the time being when looking at stream flows. But looking at stream flows right now are for when I took the snapshot. Um, See the lower flows out in Western Kentucky, not surprising, um, considering how dry they've been. And kind of a mixed bag when you get out into central and eastern Kentucky. And that's really how it's been for the entire state this winter. When we were frozen, when Matt was doing this last month, we were still frozen, and all pretty much every stream gauge was orange and red because we were frozen. The water cycles had completely stopped basically because there wasn't much water coming into the streams, and what was coming in was freezing. So, but once we thawed out, stream flows across the state came up, and have been pretty responsive to rain. Even small rains of a quarter of a third of an inch, we've seen jump in the stream flows, which is a good thing to see. It means that soil moisture is in good shape, and any rain that falls is going straight into the streams. Um, so that's what we want to see. So low, like I said, we've had some lower flows out here. Again, low flows this time of year are still higher than a high flow in August or September. So just kind of put it in perspective. We're not talking that these streams are and rivers are, dry or getting close to dry. There's still lots of water in them. It's just compared to this time normal in a normal year, they're lower. Um, looking at soil moisture, you can see pretty dry across the entire eastern United States. Um, little bit of pocket of not dry of normal soil moisture showing up Kentucky, parts of Tennessee, this region. And looking at Kentucky in general, you see, especially Western Kentucky, not surprising. It's been so dry. However, my, these are percentiles. When you're looking at percentiles for soil moisture this time of year, they're a little skewed. Because when you get down to, it's really hard to go below field capacity this time of year because you just don't have anything pulling the moisture out of the soil. Uh, eh, all your plants and stuff are dormant. You don't have a lot of evaporation coming out of soil. So once you get to field capacity, you pretty much stay there the entire winter until things start greening up. Um, so when you have soils that are at field capacity, they're going to be at the bottom of the percentiles, even though they're really not dry. That's really kind of where you want to be, um, and that's where you're going to be, even if you get a big rain and it floods the soil in 2 or 3 days, you're going to start dropping and heading right back to field capacity. So that's where you kind of want to be. So as long as we're at or above field capacity, we're in good shape, soil moisture wise. And here's some of the graphs from the Mesonet, and I'm really glad we have these. I'm glad Stu started this, and Jerry has really continued on and adding lots more soil moisture gauges across the state. They really come in handy. Um, Two on the left are from Western Kentucky, Graves County, Union County. And you look at Graves County, really, you can see it this right here at the end of January. That's when we were frozen. And so there wasn't any moisture going in the soil, and it was kind of stagnated. Um, and since then it's jumped up and been above field capacity. So even though it's been so dry out in Graves County, uh, soil moisture is still, and you can see it um, responding to precipitation events, even though they are small, and even the deeper soils, the 40-inch is showing some improvement. Union County, dropping a little below field capacity, in the 2-inch soil. So those soils have been a little drier and a little concerning, but nothing too terrible. And you could see as soon as this rain had kicked in, this caught the beginning of the rain. You could see the soils have already improved dramatically. Um, Boone County has also been very dry. But again, you can see once we got thawed out, you can see how that soil moisture improved. And you can see this is maxed out where it was flat there, the 20 and 40-inch. It's sitting at 50%. Most soils typically have 50% solid, 50% void space. So the void space was completely full and stayed there for several days. Obviously, the subsoil is you can tell is a slow draining soil there since it stayed like that. Um, but just a sign, even small amounts of rain are really filling the soil moisture up, and that's transmitting down into the subsoils and into the groundwater and the stream flow. And Fayette County just kind of been bouncing around, staying above field capacity, just kind of responding to each little rain event. So overall, soil moisture is looking good, and expect when we look at this here in a few days, they're going to be all maxed out, the rain coming, and we'll get back to that in a second. This picture here is from Webster County. Again, another snow picture. I like this camera. It's a nice little park that it looks at. You can see a lot of untouched snow, the frozen pond. Looking at the U.S. Drought Monitor, there is a lot of drought across the country. It hasn't just been a dry winter here, it's been a dry winter across much of the country. Um, and that's showing on the Drought Monitor map. If you look at just Kentucky, see we have some abnormally dry conditions out in Western Kentucky, and then the Purchase area and up into Crittenden and Union County in moderate drought. Again, with the soil moisture being good, the stream flows being good for the most part, there hasn't been a big push to push us into that abnormally dry thing, just because we have been obviously been in meteorological drought, but it hasn't really, like, to being winter, it hasn't really translated down into the soil and the stream flows and stuff. Now, if we stay this way going forward as we get into March and stuff starts to green up and we start ET starts to pick up, that can change really fast. So, but as of right now, we're still in pretty decent shape, but definitely need some rain. No question about that. And looking at the 4-week change map, you can see a lot of degradation across the country. Some minor improvements in a few places, but overall, just the country's just been um, getting drier and going deeper into drought. And looking at the state, saw some improvements over the past 4 weeks along the edges, along the Ohio River and out in southern Kentucky. Basically, that was from when we had the snow melt and things, stream flows and soil moisture improved, but had degradation out in western Kentucky where we are now in moderate drought. Looking at February storm reports, pretty quiet. Yeah, I mentioned earlier about Shelby County and that storm that was showing. Most of this is from that little, not just that storm, but a cluster of storms in general. Pretty wide, pretty isolated storms on that day, but they did drop some hail and also had a little wind damage from them out in eastern Kentucky, and also a little flash flooding in Lexington. The airport actually recorded the wettest, I guess that, like I said, February 19th, I think it was. It was the wettest February 19th on record. And I think it was close to 1.5 inches of precipitation. But both mesoneck gauges in the county were less than a half inch. So like just showing how isolated those were. Um, but the ones that did pop up did cause a little bit of damage, but nothing significant. And we did have some non-thunderstorm high winds from one of those cold fronts that came through during the month up in northeastern Kentucky. All right, going to outlooks. This picture's from the Fayette County gauge at Spindletop, and this was taken yesterday. This was one of the thunderstorms that rolled through right through my house in Georgetown. And had some pretty close lightning strikes, which meant I was making this presentation with two 70-pound dogs laying on top of me who were not happy about the first thunderstorm of the season. And like I said, we were going to talk about how March was going to go. Well, this is how March is starting off. This is the 7-day quantitative precipitation forecast, and that's going to be a lot of rain, and that doesn't include some of the rain that has already fallen. So you're talking 4 or 5 inches of precipitation. Some of these places in Western Kentucky might get more rain this week than they have since December 1st. Just that's how it goes around here sometimes. But it looks like the whole state should get a pretty good amount of precipitation this week. Even eastern Kentucky, you're looking at 1.5, 2 inches of precipitation. So if this forecast holds, we should really help us move forward and improve things. Looking at the 6 to 10-day outlook, for temperature wise, much of the southern and eastern United States, pretty high confidence that it's going to be above normal temperatures, especially here in the mid-Atlantic. Looking at precipitation, you can see a pretty strong confidence that a lot of the Ohio Valley up to the Great Lakes is going to have above normal precipitation. And again, a lot of the country is going to they have at least some confidence for higher precipitation, which is a good thing because, like I say, most of the country has been dry. The wettest part of the country, surprisingly, has been Southern California. So them being drier over the next 6 to 10 days, not such a bad thing. They've had some pretty big rain events out there. And then going to the 8 to 14-day outlook, we're kind of in between the cold and the warm, kind of near normal. As for precipitation, still have us in that above normal precipitation, but the confidence is a lot lower. So, but still like seeing the green instead of the browns and reds over us. Looking at the monthly precipitation for March, and you can see this huge bullseye of very high confidence. And again, with just this week, most of this area, if they get the precipitation they're predicting, is going to be above normal for the month, just within the first week. So that's kind of explains why they had that bullseye there. So, um, I said it looks like we're seeing some rain. We're getting rain today. We'll see more Saturday, and then another round of rain into next week. And so that's just a short-term forecast. So, and some of that might not even be captured in that 7-day QPF. So, I said it's looking pretty promising that March is not going to follow suit with 2012, and it's going to be a pretty wet month. Even if it's just the first week, we're probably going to be above average for a lot of places for the month. So that's good after having I think we went on 4 straight months below normal because November was below normal. October was the last month that we were above normal precipitation. So good to get back on the hopefully this comes true and we have a above normal March. And look at the seasonal outlook. This is March through May, so the spring, which is when we really do want the rain and need the rain. See a slight confidence that we are going to be above normal for most of the state and really the Ohio Valley up into the Great Lakes, and kind of on the edge of that above normal temperatures, equal chances for once you get into northern Kentucky. Um, so but yeah, hopefully this pans out. But I will say, take this with a grain of salt because they've had us in green through most of the winter, and obviously the exact opposite happens. So seasonal forecasts are always kind of iffy to begin with. Because going out 3 months is kind of difficult, but especially they haven't really done a good job this winter so far. This is the trout outlook, and as you can see, with all that rain that they're predicting in March, you see they're expecting a lot of improvement across the Mississippi Valley up into the Illinois, Indiana, and also across Western Kentucky. So it still looks like we're going to hold on to drought in the Rockies, High Plains, and also along the Atlantic coast. But at least this neck of the woods, hopefully we can get rid of a lot of this drought that has been plaguing the entire area since really last summer. The fire outlook for wildfires. Again, this you see the focus is on the southern United States, where they are in drought, and it's also uh, things are warming up. So this time of year, so getting a little more prone to wildfire outbreaks. But for us, we are in the normal range, and looking out into the rest of spring. Um, it's really contained down into the deep South Florida area and also out in the western Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. Um, and it is worth mentioning we are in fire season right now through I believe it's mid-April. So just saying that the risk while we're at normal risk, that means there are chances for wildfires. We're just not expecting the large fires or this huge outbreaks. But I know there have been some small fires out in eastern, especially out in eastern Kentucky. And like, that's just normal until we get leaf out. The leaf litter can dry out very quickly and lead to some small fires forming up. Um, Looking at stream flows, this came out this afternoon, or actually just before noon, and this is just looking at the next 7 to 10 days. And with all the rain that is expected, they are expecting some river flooding, some minor to moderate flooding, but most of this is up in the Wabash River Valley, up in southern Indiana. But potential is still there for some flooding, minor flooding in Kentucky, especially if the access of heavy rain over the next few days kind of shifts south a little bit, which it's always a possibility. So just something to keep an eye on, especially if we do get some heavier rains move through to kind of keep an eye on the streams and rivers. Looking at and so El Nino or La Nina was pretty weak this year, and it's pretty much done for. I believe we're neutral now, and that neutral is expected to carry us through the summer. And as we get into fall, it's looking more and more likely that we're going to slip into an El Nino. So, so it's something to keep an eye on. Still got some time before we get there. but they have been, it has been trending higher and higher probability um for El Nino. So to summarize everything, February featured below normal precipitation for the entire state, resulting in drought being being depicted on the U.S. Drought Monitor in Western Kentucky. And this was one of the driest winters on record, especially in Western Kentucky. Temperatures were slightly above normal for the month in Western Kentucky and below normal for the month in Northern and Eastern Kentucky. Um, the below normal temperatures combined with the snow melt really helped maintain soil moisture and stream flows despite the lack of precipitation. And the Climate Prediction Center is predicting above normal chances for above normal precipitation in March and through the entire spring. And despite the dry conditions this winter, the likelihood of flooding is increasing, especially north of the state, but in throughout the state with this heavy rain that we are expecting for the next couple weeks. So that is all that I have this month. Like I said, our next scheduled webinar is April 2nd at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And we're happy to answer any questions now. And if you think of anything before the next webinar, feel free to reach out to Jerry at the Climate Center, Matt Dixon at the UK Ag Weather Center, or myself. And I think I see some questions up here. If
Thanks,
get
Chip.
them.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to drop it into the chat. We may have everyone muted, so you may need to type the questions in there.
Let's see, we have ponds in area are 2 to 3 feet below normal. And these are ponds not used for livestock water, and that's in Fulton County. So it's not quite surprising how dry it's been. Hopefully if this rain they'll fill up very quickly. Um, as long as they're full coming out of spring, that's when we really get concerned. So definitely not surprising that we're seeing some below normal ponds this time of year with how dry it's been. And Steve looks like his dog was playing keyboard, playing on the keyboard, or that's what I'm gonna blame it on. I had my dog earlier in the week. I was creating a presentation for something else, and I got up and left the room and came back on, and my presentation had 200 plus extra slides, and he had saved it, so I couldn't go back and redo it. So I had to go and delete every single empty slide out of the presentation from him pawing the keyboard while I was gone. So I guess we'll wait a minute, see if anybody else has any more questions. Jerry, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just can't help but thinking we kind of got helped out a little bit with all this rain moving up into Indiana, these last few days because, well, they're in pretty severe drought in some areas, and looking ahead at the rainfall they're still forecasting for us, I think we can miss this one and still be okay. So I think it may work out in the end.
Yep. Yeah, we had that we had a really wet October and they didn't. And so that drought that we had develop, it ended up being a really quick flash drought for us, but there it's hung on throughout the fall and into the winter. So things are a lot worse up there than they have been down here. But yeah, hopefully with all this rain, we can kind of hit the reset button as we go into spring and hopefully at least keep close to normal precipitation through the spring, and I'll be happy with that. And hopefully not have another flash drought this fall. I think we're at, was it four in a row, three or four in a row?
Yeah, we're due for a non-dry fall.
Yep. Ron posted almost an inch of rain so far in March in Georgetown, Scott County. It's pretty good rain. Pretty good rain at home, at least.
Yeah, we're still waiting for it here in Warren County. I see the Mesonet had a little for us, but it's been pretty dry so far. But we keep seeing it go to our north and west, so
Yep. It should
eventually it'll
eventually
work
slide
out.
through.
Yeah.
So I know from my house, most of it came yesterday from that thunderstorm. It came down pretty good, but it's just kind of been dreary and gray and damp here. I'm in Frankfurt now, so but it's been kind of just damp and dreary all day.
Chip, I was going to ask about those other dry months you mentioned in the beginning. Were they cold months too, or do you know?
For 2012,
Back in the 63
oh, I
months?
don't know. 63, I know 63 was a pretty bad. I think it was, or am I thinking of 60? I don't know, but I'm not sure if they were cold or not.
I think that helped us a lot. Even though we were dry, we didn't really feel
Mhm.
it because it was cold and things were locked up. And like you said,
And that snow melt helped. That snow melt, it wasn't a lot of precipitation, but I mean, half inch to an inch and a half, depending on where you were, but it all went into the soil. There you go. Shane's got us.
oh, yep.
1963 had severe cold in the late January.
Wow, there you go. Yeah. Huh.
I have a feeling that's why we see, like I said, it was a dry February, but it was still like the 14th driest on record, and that has a lot to do with, you know, cold. We can have some pretty cold Februaries, and if it's cold and wet don't go together in the winter. You either have one or the other. So,
Hmm. Yeah, you have northerly wind, you're gonna be cold and dry and vice versa. So I guess that's what we're seeing.
and it should be worth mentioning. Um, Probably going to have a lot of record highs tomorrow.
That's right.
And temperatures to upper 70s and the 80s. So go out and it's not going to be raining tomorrow. So go outside and enjoy it. Might be a good Friday to play hooky. All right. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I'm gonna say we can wrap it up and see everybody back here next month. So appreciate taking the time to be on here with us and for all the questions and comments.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks, Chip.
All right, well, take care and enjoy the rain.
Bye, y'all.